We got the 416 here. We have the BTR LS3 Stage 2 camshaft installed now. So we're going to start off with the GM LS3 intake, which has a throttle body. Let's go through and do a few pulls. We're going to start off when power time it will start 24 degrees. What timing? We jump to 26, possibly go up to 28. Let's see where it likes it. See what kind of power it makes. Then we'll move to the next intake.
Here we are at 594. Kind of tell it wants a little more timing. See how it's got a little bit of jogginess there. You should see that get smoothed out as we go up to 26, possibly 28 degrees. Let's try it right up to 26 here. So see it smooth out a little bit, a little less bumps there in it. And 596. Let's just try 28 at the top here. Like 55 to 65, just to see if it does anything. Didn't do anything, so technically that's not going to want to be at 28, so we'll bring it back to 26, and then let's just take 1 second and just see if we can't bring a little bit meter field into it here at the top. One pull here, yes. Didn't like it. I would say you're at around 595 with that intake manifold, which is pretty legit for a stock intake manifold. Now let's get on to the fast intake and then the Holley Hi-Ram. We'll change it out.
So we got the 416 on the dyno. We've set the base tune all up. You guys can check out the link below for watching what we did on setting the Holley Terminator X Max up, how all the settings laid out. We are ready to do a pull. We're going to start off with some base timing at 24 degrees, see what this thing makes, and let's power time it out and see how much we can squeak out of it. For this test, we got the fast 102 intake on there, and yeah, it should rock and roll. So let's see what it does. So we're back. We made 618 horsepower, 605 foot-pounds of torque. This intake rocks, so with this setup. So the head that we have just flows really good. So this is a really good baseline number. Remember, that's just at 24 degrees. We more than likely will get 26 and 28 degrees, out of this. The other thing we're going to want to look at here is, hold on 1 second, let's get this. So now we're at 24 degrees, but let's take a look and see how our fuel table was, see what things learned at. So The fuel table's in really good shape. That's all single digits. That's 1.8% of our base fuel table numbers. So we already had that learned a little bit, but for the most part, that fuel number is ready to rock and roll. There's really nothing even to transfer there. You're just gonna go back and forth on the threshold. When we're done this timing, we power time everything out. I'm gonna lean it up a little bit here for a run or two and just see if we can really squeak some extra power out of this. So yeah, so let's get back at it. Let's do pull number 2. We're gonna go up to 26 degrees of timing, which I'm gonna set that up right now on here, and there it is, and let's hit it. So we got our second pull in at 26 degrees. Didn't do as good as I thought. I thought it would have jumped a lot more, to be honest with you. So we are at 622 horsepower, 606.9 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, I was hoping it would get a lot more, but we are going to try to go one more step. We want to do maybe one more pull and just try to see what will happen at 28, just for shits and giggles here. And yeah, we'll get after that. We might have to back up to 26, and that might be it. And then we'll try to lean it up a little bit to see if that'll help it at all. Same thing, so 622, but 607 foot-pounds of torque. So that tells me that it was not happy at 28. 26 is going to be our max. So we're going to go back to 26. We're going to leave it there. And now we will go in and try to lean it up a little bit here. So we're going to go through at about, I would say, 5,500 and up. We'll go 13.0 to 1 air fuel. It's so quick that it's going to, by the time it gets to 6,000, it's going to be there, and we'll see if that does anything different here on this next pull. Press leave, we can shut this thing off for a minute, let it cool down, and then we'll do one money run here, and we'll call this intake what it is. So some cool air getting in there, and see if we can maybe squeak 625 out of it. That'll be as much, but I do expect the Holley Hi-Ram to be a pretty good jump up on the top end, so we'll see what happens there. So we just went through a few pulls here. Started off at 24 degrees, got a baseline number, moved up to 26, went to 28, didn't see a huge difference between 26 and 28, so we just let the engine cool for a minute. We're going to go back on at 26 degrees, which seems to be where this thing wants to be. We're going to do what we call the money pull. See if we can get some power out now that it's cooled down. See if we can get the best number. I'm hoping for 625. We'll see what happens. Pretty damn close, 624. So basically the engine is, with this intake manifold, has made 624 horsepower. So now let's swap out the Holley Hi-Ram. Let's see if we can get up in the 630 range. See what the difference between these two intakes are. That'll be interesting. We're on it. Let's switch it out. Here we are. We got the Holley Hi-Ram on. Let's try this. I'm really hoping this is going to make some good power. You guys should notice this thing is way louder than the other intakes because those runners are short. They're right into an open plenum. So normally here, when we're on the dyno, that thing blasts a lot of noise out. Hopefully you'll hear it in the video. So let's get at it. We'll try it off with 24 degrees of timer. So.
So see how that one even wants maybe a little more RPM. So let's add 200 RPM to it and see. Let's see it tail off some, and that's only at 24 degrees too. So that intake usually does not disappoint. That's 26 degrees. That's 629. A few more horsepower. This engine seems like it's not going to want to go to 28 because that was too small of a jump. So I would probably say that is going to be it. But what we could do is let's let it, just like we did, like we normally do, let's let it cool down for a minute, okay? And we'll do a money pull. And I'll lean up the top just a little bit, go to 13.0. Want the last 1500 RPM, so sometimes these things like boost a little more power when you add just make it just a little leaner. So 26 degrees it is, just like the last two intakes. Let's shut this off for a minute. We let it cool down. There's the money pull. Let's see what goes. Oh, there you go. That is a product of two things. One, a little leaner, and mostly letting that thing cool down a little bit. So, able to cool and get that fresh air in there. So that heat soak is worth a little bit of power. So I'll tell you, that intake is the intake. That thing is always worth, most times, an extra 20 horsepower over any other intake that pull. So that's an impressive little piece. So those LSs, they don't disappoint.
We are here with the 416. We just tested the BTR LS3 Stage 2 camshaft. We first started off with the GM LS3 intake. That made 595 horsepower. We moved over to the Fast 102 intake. That made 622 horsepower. Over to the Holley Hi-Ram, that went 638, which was amazing. But now we have got a special guest intake that just showed up. We just had a BTR Trinity version 2 intake show up, which I've tested this intake in the past. It's made some huge numbers, so I'm really interested to see what it does in comparison to the Holley Hi-Ram. Maybe we get a little bit more power out of it. I don't know. Let's see. Let's check it out. We got the BTR Trinity V2 intake installed, and we're ready to do some runs. We know this engine like the timing at 26, so I'm not going to move it around 24, 26. Let's just run it at 26 degrees, and let's see what we get for some power, and let's hope for some big numbers. Well, there it is. Well, a little more, 640. I mean, very comparable to the Hi-Ram, and look how much lower it is. So that's interesting. Yeah, so let's, I'm gonna let it cool down for a minute. Let's do a money run and see if we can maybe lean it up a touch. So we'll try that one more run here and see what it does. This is gonna be our money run. We let this thing cool down for a little bit, get the heat soak out of it. Let's see if this BTR can make the most power out of all the intakes that we did. I did bump the timing up to 28 degrees, got the air fuel at the very top out to about 13 to 1. So this should be it. Let's try it out. $643, there it is. That tops the Holley Hi-Ram by a few, and honestly, that intake is so much lower. It'll fit under the hood of more cars than the Holley Hi-Ram will, and I don't know, I will have to overlay the graphs and see what the torque was between that and the Holley Hi-Ram, which we'll do here shortly, but I don't know. My money's on the BTR intake, honestly. Here's the overlay between the Holley Hi-Ram and the BTR Trinity. I screwed up on the name here, so that was one of the last customers we dynoed. So both of these are going to be the 416, so make no mistake about that. And the Holley Hi-Ram actually made 20 more foot-pounds of torque. The BTR was about 561, the Holley Hi-Ram was 582. They were pretty similar in horsepower the whole way. The Hi-Ram made a little bit more in the middle, but honestly, that Hi-Ram isn't going to fit out of a lot of hoods. So if you got a ton of room under your hood, and you like the look of the Hi-Ram, I think that would be the better way to go. But for most, I would probably say 70% of the customers, if not 80%, that don't have a ton of hood clearance, I mean, that BTR Trinity intake not only looks badass, but it performed great. Yes, there's a little bit of torque loss there, but you got a ton of torque no matter what. So lighter cars, you're gonna enjoy that. I think that's gonna run real good. And the other nice thing is that these intakes both were able to be revved right to 7,000. There was no major dip. So ultimately, we ran them to 6,700 here without having a super tail on them. But you could run these all the way to 7,000 without your car nosing over and actually losing speed. So I would set my rev limiter at 72 with these intakes. I'd run them clear to 7,000. You should get some pretty good ETs out of them and some amazing performance.
Okay, so we finished all the testing on the Stage 2 camshaft, and now I wanted to go back through and do some comparisons from the Stage 1 to Stage 2. So the first dyno sheet we have up is the LS3 intake, which kind of blew my mind. This camshaft wasn't a huge jump between intake and exhaust duration between Stage 1 and Stage 2. So I guess it's not as surprising, but if you look at the dyno sheets between the Stage 1 and Stage 2 with the GM LS3 intake, the Stage 2 cam made about 5 horsepower less, which could just be a factor of the day we dynoed it, the weather. The dyno was just not that exact. You could flex 5 or so horsepower pretty easily in different situations, but still, you would have thought that it would have jumped up maybe at least 7 or 10 horsepower more than the Stage 1. Which again was very surprising to me. And next up, we had the fast intake manifold, and that didn't make a big change either. The runners, the torque is, if you look at the overlay here, the torque is right on top of each other. There's a little bit more torque in the middle from the fast, but geez, if that's 5 foot-pounds, that is not a ton. Horsepower, at the very peak, it did make a little more horsepower, about 10 there, which I expected it to because it is a bigger throttle body, a bigger runner. So I think if you would have saw a comparison, if I would have jumped the cam 8 or 10 degrees bigger than the Stage 1, this intake would have shined a lot more. I think you would have probably saw a little bit of decrease in low-end torque, but you would have saw a little more increase on top-end horsepower. But either way, both of these are very, very good power numbers, really good torque, good horsepower. There's not a lot more you could ask for than 625 horsepower out of an engine that has a camshaft that is extremely streetable. No disappointments here, just surprised that the Stage 2 cam didn't jump up a little bit more in power. Next, we are with the Holley Hi-Ram. So the Hi-Ram, obviously, from Stage 1 to Stage 2, there definitely was a little more torque with Stage 2, a little more horsepower. Again, not a huge jump, but certainly made a little bit more with the Stage 2 cam, which again, that intake is a pretty high flowing intake manifold. It's always going to want a little larger camshaft. So in this case, exactly what it got, and we made 638 horsepower on the top end. This one we revved right to 67. You can see it really didn't nose over. So you could probably again pull this thing all the way to 7,000 if you're on a drag strip or whatnot, or out on the street, and not have your car nose over with this intake manifold. Again, with that, I think this is pretty typical from adding a little bit of duration. We added some torque, we added some horsepower. So that doesn't surprise me any, but good result there. And then lastly, we did get the BTR Trinity intake in, which was all by itself. We really didn't get to test it with the Stage 1, but with the Stage 2, it was the winner. I think we actually had a 643 horsepower graph. I'm not sure where that went, but anyways, here, this one was 640 horsepower. And again, same thing as the Hi-Ram. I think you could rev it all the way to 7,000 RPM. This intake, you heard me mention this a few times on the video, that this intake manifold, again, I think it's the winner out of all of them because it's much lower than the Hi-Ram. It's going to fit under a lot more hoods.
and it made the most peak horsepower with that camshaft. So it'd be interesting to see if we jumped up when, let's say, over the stage 2 cam, if we went up another 6 or 8 degrees larger in duration at 50, just to see how much torque it was lost and if we could gain a bunch more power. Typically, this 416 with its 4070 bore in our head, I haven't seen anything more than 650 horse, even when I jump compression and camshaft up. So again, for a streetable cam, I think this is the winner all day long. Because as you go up 8 or 10 degrees on duration of 50, you guarantee you're losing drivability, you're losing some low-end torque off the bottom. So it gets to be a lot nastier. So I think that this stage 2 cam is going to be the best of both worlds. Give you all the power, give you a good idle sound, but really good street manners. So next, we are going to be doing a whole test like this on a 370 cubic inch LS with the Truck Norris cam. So for all the truck guys out there, that'll come out next Sunday. So check that out, and hopefully we'll see you over there. Thank you.